Hi everyone. Today let's talk about the Fed rate cut. Then we'll get into the usual charts and data, and you can see we hit major resistance here today just like we expected to, and a clear rejection. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So the Fed cut rates by 0.5 point, and we did talk about it. I was not thinking we were going to get 50 basis points, but sure enough we did. 0.5%, 50 basis points, signaling that the inflation market has moderated and the labor market is weakening significantly. Interestingly, during the meeting, they talked about how the revision of the jobs data did have a big effect on their thoughts. So that was a pretty significant move. We talked about it on the channel when it happened, and he cited it as one of the key factors that caused them to cut 50 basis points. That's not something that I correlated, and I probably should have. But now the Fed funds rate is 4.75 to 5. Interesting. We're starting to see that spill over into consumer products as well as mortgages, loans, and credit cards. You'll also see your high yield savings accounts probably coming down here pretty soon, if not already. They usually react quite quickly to these kind of effects. But the interesting thing here now is usually once you start to see those cuts, you can see back here in 2008, they started cutting ahead of the recession. Couple of cuts, recession hits, big cuts all the way down to zero. Is that going to happen again? If it does, obviously that's going to be catastrophic. And looking at the voting, it was 11-1 with one Fed governor preferring a quarter point move. Everyone else voted for a 0.5 point, so obviously they won. And they also projected another 50 basis points at least before the end of the year. It'll probably come in 25-point increments, but they did say it's not the series of 50 basis points, so we're probably going to get 50 and 25 and 25 like I mentioned. And they also expect the unemployment rate to continue to rise up to that 4.4 level, and then they said it's going to stay at that level. That's the big question. Is it going to continue to rise? If it does, we'll probably hit a recession. If it hovers at that level and stays stable, we're probably going to be in good shape and get that soft landing. So a bunch of things on the table. He continued to say that the jobs market was soft, but economic growth overall was still pretty good, tracking for 3% growth in third quarter, continuing a strong consumer market, while central banks are still trying to get to that 2% inflation target, while it's currently running around 2.5%. And this is the first cut in a very long time. You can see the hiking started in March of 22. We've been at this very high level. We've been flat for a while, and now we've seen that first cut. And they also mentioned that they are the last in the group to start making cuts. We've seen it across the major economies, and it makes sense that they cut 50 basis points as a little bit of a catch-up. Moving over to fear and greed, 56 up from a 54. Again, seeing that incremental rise here, continues to slowly grind. Despite momentum actually tapering a little bit, we're still seeing strength pop off. NYSE continues to look very strong. That is a high level here. So we're at 7.69. The last time we were up around 7.19, that was the tops before we saw that fall. Very high level. I don't know if I've ever seen it that high. Breadth continues to hover in the same zone. Put call ratio pulling back, starting to see greed there. Volatility went a little bit higher today. We'll look at that later. And then safe haven demand still in fear. Junk bond demand still in fear. So bond markets still continuing to outperform, and people are definitely concerned on those spreads still in junk bonds. Moving over to seasonality here, you can see seasonality is showing the 18th as the low of this week. We'll see if that plays out. Honestly, I don't think it's going to. I don't think we're going to get this end of week rally into the Thursday, Friday, but we'll see how it plays. That's what seasonality says. And then after that is more bearishness to come. I think we're probably going to skip that and see that bearish move, but we'll see how it plays. Right now, markets are still hovering. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see CPI coming in line or better than expectations for the Eurozone, so that's quite good. Housing starts better than expected. Building permits better than expected, so some good numbers there. And then looking at all the interest rate projections, you can see all of these decreased pretty substantially. I'm glad they're including this now on this economic calendar. 3.4% for a year from now, 4.4% for the end of the year. Makes sense. That's another 50 basis points, like they mentioned. 50 basis point cut. They did cut more than expected based on their projection here. And then for tomorrow, we still have a little bit of data. Initial jobless claims, existing home sales, 10-year tips. That should be pretty low. And then Fed balance sheet. They said during the meeting that they are going to continue to roll off their balance sheet. And then for Friday, there's basically nothing on the calendar. So markets are going to do what they do. Moving over to Max Pain. Max Pain is still at 545. Stock price still very high at 562. Total options went up quite a bit to 4.4 million. Put call ratio also going up a little bit. I still think we're going to see a little bit of a fall towards that 555, 550 area, which again is about 1%, 1.5%, maybe even 2% lower from current price. So we'll see how it plays. SMAs, right now we're kind of in this range at the upper end of it, right at the top of the puts. I would expect this to roll down a little bit, and we'll see it on the charts. Markets look a little weak going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps, sure enough, we did get a wick high to a new all-time high. That high was 5689.75. Hit the trend line, immediately rejected, ended up down about 0.25%. We did close below the body of the previous candle, so that's also a little bit bearish at a key resistance. If we get that confirmation candle down after that, we should expect more down move. 55 EMA is sitting there at 55.17. Momentum stepping to bearish, RSI basically neutralized. This is going to be a triple top in my opinion, and this continues to look more and more like that. And then looking at the shorter time frames here, you can see that big wick on the announcement of the 50 basis points. The high on the SPY was 568.68, so well above all those previous highs. You can see took out all those levels, took out all the stops. Big selling, about 1/3% here. In terms of trend, we have clear consolidation of EMAs on the hourly chart, looking for a breakdown. 560.07 is the level. We did have a slightly lower low, kind of, but really it held the low from the previous day. This continues to look like it's rolling over though. And then your short-term price target would be that 200 SMA down at 554.35, right at my level 554.87, and all of those fit within the thesis of the max pain charts we just looked at. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see that big wick hit the upper ATR band almost to the penny there at 568.97, came up just a few pennies short, but we're below that 8 EMA, testing that 21 EMA, again seeing consolidation, got big volume on the day on the selling candle, momentum moving to bearish. You still have the ATR stop, so you're still technically bullish conditions based on 558.79 being your support level there, which is basically right on top of your 34 EMA at 558.76, so right in that same zone. We'll see if this zone holds. My guess is we're going to need a little bit more consolidation, but eventually we are going to break down here. And just like I mentioned, lowest ATR bands flattening out, upper ones still trending a little bit higher, but after today's price action, this seems to be flattening a little bit more, just like we saw going back to the 21st and 22nd of August. Moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis. We didn't quite hit the trend line that I was looking for. That was at 19,735. It's a little bit too far away to see that touch, but we did throw a wick to all these relative highs, and then we did see the sell-off about 0.5%, momentum selling off, RSI selling off. So you can see 21 EMA starting to trend down, 55 still trending down. These longer term trends are basically flattening out here, but the 9 still trending up a little bit, so you have that support. We'll see if this holds. Still looks like a bit of a consolidation, but more likely to break down after today's price action. And then looking at it here on the short time frames, you can see we've been watching this trend line here. We're kind of chopping on top of it. We did close below it by quite a bit on the daily chart. Again, huge volume coming on those last two candles. Touched the level 477.69. Very powerful rejection off of that. Seems to be finding a little bit of strength after hours, but that consolidation of EMAs is right here at 473.81. And you can also see that same consolidation of EMAs on the daily chart sitting around that 469.50 area. So you got a little bit of support here, which is probably why we keep bouncing off of this zone here on the hourly, but clear rejection off of this zone here to the upside as well. So I'm waiting to see for that clear direction. To me, it still seems like we're going to break down, especially with the close below this short-term trend that we've been watching on the daily chart. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on the 4-hour, you can see those wicks up, took out all these previous highs, just like we talked about, took out these highs back here as well, going back to the 1st and 2nd of September. And now you can see these ATR bands are definitely flat here. So the upper bands starting to trend a little bit lower bands definitely flattening out. Similar to the price action back here again from the 21st and 22nd, just like we talked about on the SPY charts. ATR support still at 468.12. So once that breaks, then you're expecting a little bit more downtrend. Right now, we're still holding this position, waiting to see if we get another up push, but it seems less and less likely each day. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell managed to stay flat on the day, 0.02, through a huge wick. The high of day was all the way up at 224.94. We thought we might get that push yesterday, ended up giving it back through another big wick to those levels. Technically, that wick was higher than this previous high, so that's also interesting. After hours, showing a little bit of rally, but we're still in the same range technically. This is still a bull trend, momentum still bullish, big volume on the day. I like that it stayed bullish. I like that it's pushing a little bit after hours. Definitely concerned with those two strong wick rejections. We've seen that before, similar to this previous high where you just continue to throw wicks, get that big topping tail, and then a big sell the next day. That would be very concerning. Definitely definitely keeping an eye on that. But overall, I still like this right now. And then looking at the Dow, just continues to throw wicks to this trend line. It's basically 3 days in a row. Big selling candle today, 0.25% down. Technically, we closed below the body of the 16th, so that's a little bit bearish as well. Waiting to see if this gap fills back here to the 13th or potentially as low as the 12th, which would bring you back down to that 21 EMA, which is most likely in my opinion, and that level is 411.52. Moving over to the Mag 7, the Mag 7 stayed basically flat, 0.09. Honestly, I was pretty shocked to see how little of an effect that 50 basis points cut had. We wicked these highs just like we did yesterday, sold off, closed below the candle from yesterday, looking for the gap fill back to the Monday session. Momentum basically flat. Again, throwing wicks at this previous high. At this point, it seems like it's going to sell off. Once 265.08 breaks, we're probably pushing back down to these trends around 257. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. My guess here is that Apple did do some stock buybacks after we got down into the 214s. Momentum stepped back to bullish. RSI is right there, right at that SMA, waiting to see what happens there. Overall, I still don't like this. It's right at the 9 EMA, still well below the 21 and 55 as well as VWAP. So I don't think it's going to break to new highs by any means. And I would be looking for this as a zone of resistance. And then looking at Microsoft, big seller there. It had a very powerful day yesterday, touched the level at 440. That was the most recent price target, rejected off of there, ended up closing quite a bit lower off of its highs, and then more selling here today, 1% lower. 429.88 is the level. As long as that holds, you're in good shape, but now you have a step to bearish on momentum. If this level breaks, it's probably headed back down to the 420s, as low as 423 at least. And I would look for around 423 at that 144 EMA. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla managed to stay basically flat. 0.25% down is not a big move for Tesla. It's still in the same trading range it's been in all the way since the 12th, really the 13th, really the 11th, still here, waiting to see as long as this zone holds at that 9 EMA, 224.81. You also have the 55 there, 224.83. This is the zone of support that you're watching. Need this to hold, looking for that break of 232.57. Critical zone there. If it breaks, it's going much higher. But at this point, you've had some clear rejection. Markets are looking a little bit concerning. And then looking at NVIDIA here, 2 selling candles in a row. Broke this trend line yesterday, got more selling here today. It's right at the 9 EMA. If 113.14 breaks, then that is going to push down to that 106.64 level in my opinion. And then you got the 144 just behind it, 105.20. So definitely looking for more selling here tomorrow. Closed on the bottom of the candle. Everything on NVIDIA looks quite bearish. Moving over to Amazon and Alphabet here, you got Amazon again touching 188.61. Pulled back, ended up with a doji, 0.25% lower. Again, 4 candles in a row of indecision, choppy price action. Still can't get above the level. As long as it holds below it, that's a bearish push. Waiting for that move down. Momentum is fading. RSI basically flat. And similarly here on Google, hit our price target of the 200 of the 21 EMA. That was back here at 160.82. My level's also there at 161.59. High of day was 161.63. Still can't seem to get above that level. As long as that level holds as resistance, then we should be looking for a bearish push. And this is still overall a downtrend, so it's not too hard to think that this is going to continue to sell from here, or at least give you a double bottom opportunity. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, both of these sold off 0.38 and 0.12. Staples continued to sell to that VWAP and 21 EMA. That's what we thought was going to happen, 82.81. Low of day was 82.80, so touched it almost to the penny. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Again, this looks like a topping pattern, kind of a left shoulder head, right shoulder potentially forming here. And then looking at discretionaries, through a big wick again, overtook yesterday's wick, still can't get above 193.81. Think this is going to sell here tomorrow. Momentum stepping to bearish, RSI rolling to the bear side. So everything here pretty much looks bearish going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to oil and gas and technology. Oil and gas continues to look pretty good, 0.36 to the upside. Problem here is that it hit my VWAP and the 21 EMA. That level was 133.52 and then it rejected a little bit from there. So that's concerning. Momentum still bearish, RSI still bearish. Momentum still bullish, RSI still bullish. But this is overall a downtrend. You do have to factor that in. It's been a strong move. I think this could be a zone where we could see a little bit of rejection, maybe a higher low setup or something like that. So I'll be watching this one closely. I might take my profits and try to reestablish depending on what we see. But in the short term, this move might be culminated. I still would like to see 135.07 get touched, but that might not be in the cards after that pretty strong wick that we saw today. And then looking at technology, continues to sell here. It's below this consolidation, not great. 0.91, and then 21 EMA, 217.10. Closing price was 217.17, so we are just barely hanging on to that 21 and VWAP in here. Momentum stepping to bearish, RSI rolling down. So this continues to look bearish with that lower high setup, and technology seems to be leading a little bit here versus the NASDAQ, which was holding up a little bit better, but in this same setup. Moving over to Breadth. Breadth continued to sell here just like we thought that it was going to. 20-day, 2 steps in a row to the bear side, back below the level there. 68.14 continues to break. Looking for a move back down to the 51.75 level. Similarly here on 50-day Breadth. 2 big wicks, 2 clear rejections. Closing candle is quite bearish. I would expect more move to the downside. Momentum still hanging in there, but realistically I think that's going to break down tomorrow pretty significantly. So bearishness pretty much across markets. We'll see how it plays on Breadth for tomorrow. Moving over to the dollar actually threw big wicks in both directions and then basically stayed flat. So 0.08 to the downside. Momentum basically flat. RSI looks a little bit bearish. This is still a triple bottom. You can see on the daily chart, we did hit that trend. On the hourly, we came up just a little bit short. I would call it a touch. But this is a triple bottom here now. I think the dollar pretty much had this priced in. That's why the dollar was selling off so aggressively as we got closer. Now we've consolidated. I still think this dollar is going to find a little bit of strength. It's just too extended to the downside. You can see RSI continuing to grow here despite the similar price action. So we'll see how it plays. I still like this to the upside. And if it shows some strength, that's going to be bearish for equities. Moving over to JNK and TLT. JNK hit the level 97.69. High of day was 97.82. So we hit the price target. Then we sold off quite a bit from there. Could be an initial touch. Overall, still looks good. Very extended here, almost into overbought conditions once again. And then TLT, big sell off there, 1.24%. We talked about this grinding price action. We were at clear resistance, could not get it above those trend lines. Interesting to see the 100 level break, 21 EMA at 99.10. Look to see what happens there, and then you got some trends down here. Let's go ahead and extend that out a little bit and give you some support around the 98.81 level. Moving over to the VIX. The VIX continues to give higher lows here, so higher low, higher low, higher low, all of that off of this previous low. So we did add a trend. You can see we're still pulling up off of that level. Maybe this needs to be adjusted more like that. Maybe that makes a little bit more sense. Either way, higher lows to come. Generally, that means we're going to get a little bit of a higher high. We couldn't get higher than this previous one back here at the beginning of August, but I do think we can eclipse this move at the beginning of September. So either way, this looks a little bit bullish going into tomorrow's session, which fits with the overall thesis. Moving over to my accounts, I managed to squeeze out just another couple of dollars. You like to see it. The IWM holding in there, still got that 219, made a little bit of money there, even with it being a little bit bullish, so that's good. Looking at the Qs, I did end up rolling out here to 470 for the next day. Max profit there is around 474, so it gives me a little bit of room. It is rallying a little bit after hours. You can see it's almost already there at 474, so we'll see if we get that rally through. I can obviously roll out again tomorrow if I need to, but trying to scrape in a few pennies, give myself some money there. Based on this closing price, I should have about $400 of potential profit on that position for tomorrow if it hangs in there. I'm not sure that it will, but either way, I have protection down to 470. And then looking at XOP again, watching this one closely, still have money in the shares, still protected down to 131, still looking for that 163 profit. It is very close. Right now we're at about $1, so looking for about another 60 cents out of it. Right here you can see that 60 cents. As long as it hangs in there, I'll look to hold it into the Friday, but if it starts to sell off, I'm probably going to take that off tomorrow and look for a little bit lower price once again. Overall, very cautious. Markets look quite bearish except for the Russell, which still looks okay. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the 50 basis points. Does that make you concerned about markets? Is it going to lead to that recession? Are you still looking for that? Or do you still believe in the soft landing? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.